Morning guys, this is Keith with Panther Creek Bushcraft. Today I'd like to talk a little bit about the ferro rod and some natural tinder sources you can use. But before I get started, I would like to say, don't leave home without a lighter. This is my favorite fire starting method because you can always count on it. You have that instant gratification with a flame. And it's always easier to start a fire with a flame than with a spark. Okay, let's get at it. Okay, start with, this is the ferro rod I would recommend. It's either 1/2 or 3/8 in diameter and 5 or 6 inches long. You take the end and you wrap some tape around it, some Gorilla tape, and that becomes your handle. It makes it easier to hold on to. Now another type of ferro rod you can use is one of these small ones like this. They usually come with their own little striker. The problem with these is the handle comes off every time. So what I've done with this one is I've just put some Gorilla tape on it and attached the striker like this. These strikers they're actually pretty decent. I mean, they'll throw a few sparks. That's not bad. My preferred method is to use a knife. Now what you do, you have to have a good square edge on the back side of your knife. Okay, even if you have to file it or grind it or whatever, that's what you need. And it throws sparks very well. Now, this bigger rod, the advantage of the bigger rod is you're traveling this full length instead of just this little short length like this. So you're able to remove more material and make more sparks. And with more sparks, it generates more heat, and it's easier to light marginal tinder sources, like if it happens to be damp or maybe a little too coarse. Okay, usually you'll see people using a ferro rod like this, moving the knife. And you can do that, and there are some times when you have to do that, but the best way is to pull the ferro rod to you, like that. When you're doing it like this, sometimes you'll smack your tinder and you'll knock it over or put the flame out if you've already got it lit. Okay, the first tinder source I'd like to talk about is man-made. This is Mini Inferno. It's made by Self-Reliance Outfitters, and this is very, very good stuff. It comes in these little wafers. And these are waterproof. You can dunk these in water and they are still good. But what you do is you break them open and you expose these fibers like this. I think I'm just going to use a 1/2 of one for this demonstration. But you have it like that, and it's lit. Just that simple. Okay, another thing you can do with a ferro rod is use it to light char material. This is my char tin. Inside here I've got some charred punk wood. And we can take a piece of this, and all it takes is a very light spark. Hopefully you can see that. We would place this in a bird's nest and blow it into flame. Okay, the next tinder source I'd like to talk about comes from this tree. This is a tulip poplar. It grows everywhere in the eastern woodlands. This is the bark. It's very easy to identify. It has a kind of a gray color. And these trees grow very tall, very straight. Actually, we're in a thicket right now of nothing but poplar trees. These are all poplars. This is what the leaf looks like. Looks a little like a woman's nightgown, the shape. Now, to use this tree as a tinder source, you need to find a fallen limb. In this case, we're using a small tree that's been broken over. And the bark, as you can see, is peeling off of it. And this is what you want to use. You just grab this bark and pull it off. And you've got this big strand. See how fibrous that is? And this is just a little damp, but I think we can make it work. So what you do, you cut off a piece I can use here. Take it and you work it back and forth. Rub it against itself is the best way. And then you end up with this. So you do that with this whole piece. See how fluffy that looks? Man, that takes a spark. Great. Okay guys, this is an eastern red cedar. It's also called an aromatic cedar. Okay, we can take this cedar, and at certain times of year, the bark is loose and stringy, and you can just pull it off in handfuls. This is not that time of year. So what we can do is take the back of our knife and scrape. Now we don't want to scrape very deep, or we get into the inner bark, and that is kind of sappy, and it doesn't light very well. It's best to stay on the outside. We don't want to take so much that it damages the tree. We just want to take enough to get a fire going. Now the red cedar, I don't think as a tinder source it is quite as good as the tulip poplar, but it will work. And this works especially well if you can add some other stuff to it, like dried grasses or tulip poplar bark. Okay, so we've got our tulip poplar bark. We're going to continue to process it, buff it up, and get it as fluffy and fine as possible. Okay, we'll take all this stuff and get rid of it. That's no good. Now, process and process and process. that is about what we're looking for. And again, this is just a little damp, but I think it's going to be okay. Now, to light this, we can do it like this, and that's fine. I prefer to get my foot up here, and I have found that I can aim a little better and throw the sparks right where I want them if I do it this way. Once we get it lit, we flip it over. And you can tell this is damp by all that smoke coming off of there. Okay. Okay, now we have our cedar bark. I didn't harvest as much of this because I really didn't want to walk around and harvest from a bunch of different trees. But we've got something here we can work with. Now let's see how well it fires up. I might have to add something to it to make it go. Yeah, she's just not wanting to go. But I have some dry grasses here. I just pull the lightest, fluffiest, stringiest pieces out of here. We buff this up as well. And we add it to that cedar. As you can see, that cedar does not burn as well as the yellow poplar, but it will work in a pinch. Keep in mind, this is a little damp as well. So now, what do we do in a case like this where everything is damp? Sometimes it's just too wet. You can't get anything going with just a spark. Well, that is where the mini Inferno comes in. Also, I like to make these little things right here. Now this is just some jute twine that I've twisted up and then dipped it in melted wax. And what you do is you fuzz up the end a little bit. See that? Put it beside your knife. lights, and you can use this as a match. Okay, another thing you can do, the old long hunters and pioneers, mountain men, always carried a candle. And you can light a candle with a ferro rod. Again, you take the wick, and the wick needs to be burnt already for this to work very well. And you fuzz that wick just a little, as best you can. And then you've got to cheat a little. So what you do is you scrape off some of this ferro rod. Do it slowly and steadily without making a spark, because you're trying to build up a little pile of this loose stuff. Careful. And there we go. Okay, one more natural tinder source to use when everything is soaking wet is fatwood. Now, fatwood comes from a red pine. Red pines don't actually grow in my area, so I had to buy this. But fatwood can be got in small amounts from white pine, loblolly pine, and even cedar. It's not as good as the red pine, but it will work in a pinch. This is completely waterproof. It just has so much sap in it, and the sap is flammable. Or I'm sorry, not sap, but resin. So it's, I mean, like I said, it's completely waterproof and very flammable. What you do is you take the back of your knife and you scrape. Until you get a good sized pile. Like this. Let's see that. That's a pretty good sized pile there. And then again, you strike it with a ferro rod. And I don't know if you can see that black smoke coming off of there, but that is the resin in that wood burning. Again, this is all natural. There's nothing that has been done to this chemically. This is just a natural piece of wood. I always carry some fatwood with me, just for this reason. It is so easy to light, and it makes a very hot fire. As you can see, it burns for quite a while. Okay guys, I guess that's about all I have to say for today. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.